a bunch more people in here, so we're going to do the same thing we did yesterday. If you weren't here yesterday, well, what I did is one of the questions I always ask people is, how's your day 1 through 10? 1 is worst day ever. 10 is best day ever. All right. So we're going to do girls first. Actually, we got kind of a mix this time. So we're going to start on this side again. We're going to go through, and I want you to tell me how your day is going to go. 1, worst day ever. 10, best day ever. Okay. So everybody's got it. Everybody can count 1 to 10. All right, don't take off your shoes. All right. What kind of day are we having? 7. Okay. Not, you had to think. You had 8. You went down. Why'd you go down? Okay. All right. 7. What kind of day? 9. 7. 8, and there's always 1. You always have to throw in the half. All right, 8 and a half. Not. Oh, all right, 9 3/4. All right, I'm gonna skip you guys for a second. 8. 10. Did I just wake you up? I surprised you. 10. A solid 7. So no like wavering on that. All right, solid 7. 8. All right. Now let's go to you, young man. What's he having? A 9. 9 works.
7 and 99.
We're not taking off our shoes for that. 6.5 or 7. Okay, here's what I want you guys to do. We're going to talk about something very neat, and we're calling it Gentile behavior, all right? So if you have your Bibles, open to 1 Peter chapter 4. If you don't, I want you to remember this verse. 1 Peter chapter 4 and verse 3. Because one of the ways that we determine so much about our life is about the way that we view how we live. And what I mean by that is I can probably, by your guys', like what kind of day you're having, I can probably, by a scale of 1 to 10, tell you a little bit how your day's gone and a little bit about how your day will go. When I ask that to our Wednesday night group, and I'm usually teaching our Wednesday night young people's class, and I ask them how their day went, I can tell on a 1 to 10 scale how their day is going to go, but we also ask this question. I say, how's your tomorrow going to go? So we ask, how's today and how's tomorrow? And it's really funny because most people be like, oh, my day was really bad. It was a hard day. I had to go to school or I had to go to work or whatever. And they'll tell you that and then they'll go, it's a 4. And I go, 4? That's a pretty bad day. And then they say, well, but tomorrow's payday, so it's a 9. Or somebody will say, we have one girl and she's great. She'll say, I'm going to go eat at my favorite restaurant, so it's going to be about an 8.5. And I said, only an 8.5 for your favorite restaurant? She said, I'm not there yet. Once I get there, it'll be 10. So, and the reason I ask that question is because most people, and I think there's an okay side to this, most people just kind of live in the moment. And I think there's moments like we really, really have to enjoy. And I think there's things in our life that we need to enjoy as the moment, but also we need to think a little bit further in the future. So when we talk about this idea of Gentile behavior, we're going to talk about thinking in the future a little bit, because that's what it boils down to. Now, let's read this verse. Let's read this text. It was just read a moment ago, by the way, by David in the class up there in case you missed it. But here's what it says. I'm going to go back to verse 1. 1 Peter chapter 4, it says, since therefore Christ suffered in the flesh, arm yourselves in the same way of thinking, for whoever has suffered in the flesh has ceased from sin. We talked about that yesterday. Verse 2, so as to live for the rest of the time in the flesh, no longer for human passions, but for the will of God. For the time is past suffices, okay, for doing what the Gentiles want to do, living in sensuality, passions, drunkenness, orgies, drinking parties, and lawless adultery. So when you think about Gentile behaviors, that's what's being said. Now, let's put this in a little bit more context for you. Let's put it in times and cultures. You had the Jews and you had the Gentiles. The Jews were the chosen people of God going to follow what God wanted them to do. Then you had this term, it's an overall sweeping term, it's Gentiles. The Gentiles were people that were outside of what we would call God's family. They were outside of that. They just kind of went and they just kind of did whatever they wanted to do. And one of the reasons they did whatever they wanted to do is because they didn't know about God. The Bible tells us that they really didn't know. And when many of the Gentile population found out, they said, hey, we want to be Christians in the church. That's what we want to do. We want to be Christians. So when we talk about Gentile behavior, we're talking about behavior that's outside of what we know of being church. If you were here yesterday, I used the term churchy things. All right, it's outside of the churchy things. And if you notice, it's what we would call bad stuff. We would put it up into bad stuff. Look at what it says if you got your Bibles. Sensuality, passions, drunkenness, orgies, drinking parties, and lawless adultery. Now, you guys may not have any friends that do that. And that's great. You may have friends that do that. But the fact of the matter is, at some point, you kind of cross over into making really your own decisions. When I was younger, my parents always told me the same thing. When you get to be 18, you can do whatever you want. And I thought, well, that sounds pretty cool. I'm going to get to be 18. I'm going to do whatever I want. I had a friend when I went to Freed Hardman. When I went to Freed Hardman, I was 19 years old. And my roommate was 18 years old. He was a freshman. I was coming in kind of as a junior. I started college a little bit early. So I came in the room one day, and he had a sleeve of cookie dough. Anybody here like cookie dough? All right. He had a sleeve of cookie dough like you go buy at the store. And I looked at him and I said, what are you doing? And he says, my mom told me, and I thought, oh, here's the phrase. My mom told me when I get to be 18, I can do whatever I want. She wouldn't let me have cookie dough growing up, so I'm going to eat cookie dough. And he said, I'm not only eating one, but I'm eating two. And he had two of those big, long sleeves of cookie dough. And I looked at him and I said, nuh-uh. And he said, and guess what? And I said, what? And he goes, I got another one. I looked at him and I said, your stomach and that cookie dough are not going to go together. And you know what he told me? He said, how do you know? You know what I told him? Because I did the exact same thing. All right, my mom grew up, when I grew up, my mom would make cookies. She would say this. She would say, you could have a spoonful of cookie dough. Now, my mom could make some cookie dough. And I would go in, and my brother, you guys saw my brother Aaron. If you saw him this week, you know, he's a big, ugly one. And when you saw Aaron would walk over, and he'd get a spoon, and he'd get a little bit of cookie dough. My sister would get a little spoon. My brother would get a spoon. I'd walk over to where my mom kept the ladles and the serving spoons. I'd get one of those, and I'd take a big scoop and run. I love cookie dough. But when I got to learn how to make my own cookie dough, guess what? I made a bowl of it and just sat down and watched TV and ate it. About 2 hours later, that was a bad decision. And I told my roommate, I said, listen, you can't do that. That's going to be a bad decision. You know what he told me? Leave me alone. I can do it myself. Now, how does that factor into this? Here's the way that we learn. We learn from our experiences, and we learn from others people's experiences. Now, if you read the Bible, if you get in the Bible, you'll figure this out. And one of the things you'll figure out is this. It's written for our learning, so we can see how people lived and did really good. We can see how people lived and did very bad. So when you think about that, this is where I want you to, at least today, if you don't remember anything else I say, remember this. I want you to remember some numbers real quick, okay? I want you to remember the numbers 20, the number 10, the number 5, and the number 1. All right? Everybody got that? 20, 10, 5, and 1. I want you to remember those. Pretty simple numbers. Now, if you're really, really good, I want you to remember those. 20, 10, 5, 1. But then I want you to remember this. 6, 3, and 1. Okay? There's no pattern. If you're trying to figure out the pattern, there's no pattern. But I want you to remember this, right? I'm going to go through them again. 20, 10, 5, and 1. And if you're really good, then I want you to remember 6, 3, and 1. All right? And here's why. It all has to do with Gentile behavior. It all has to do with that, and also with a greater question. And the big question is, what determines our behavior? What determines our behavior is what's in our brain. It's the way that you think. It's what you think about. How many people here are not morning people? You don't like getting up in the morning. I don't like getting up in the morning. I'll be honest. I just. All right, it depends. Okay, so it depends what's for you. So you got a purpose behind it. For me, my purpose in the morning is coffee. The caffeine doesn't affect me. Caffeine's never affected me. I just get it because I love the taste of coffee. But if you want a good morning routine, when your alarm goes off, immediately jump out of bed, grab your covers, throw them over your bed, okay? Because number one, it's motivation. Number two, makes your parents happy. And you throw it over there, and you get up, and you stand there, and you start stretching, and you start moving. Your brain tells you, hey, let's get up, let's go, let's move, let's move. Because what people typically do is, nobody can do math until the morning. And your alarm goes off, and you're like, oh, it's 6:15. I got to get up at 7. It's 45 minutes. It's going to take me 12 minutes to get ready. Then I got to eat, and it's going to take me. So we start figuring out math. But the studies have shown if you get up and you put those covers over your bed, it like says, okay, I'm done sleeping now. Your brain tells yourself, I'm done sleeping. Let's get moving. Let's go. So what determines our behavior is our way of thinking. So let me see if I can change yours for a moment. Okay? And I'm not going to change it in a bad way. I want to change it in a good way. Remember those numbers? 20, 10, 5, 1. Once again, if you're really good, 6, 3, and 1. Here's why. And I want to ask you this question, and I want you to think about it. I ask everybody this question, by the way. Everybody when I'm teaching and we're talking about brains and we're talking about what's up in our noggin and all that kind of fun stuff. Where are you going to be in 20 years? That's what I just want you to think about it. You don't have to answer it, just think about it. Where are you going to be in 20 years? See, for me, I'm 48. I don't mind telling age. Age is just a number, right? That's all that age is. All right, so age of me in 20 years, I'm going to be, well, close to turning 69 years old. And people immediately go, oh, that's old. What? I'm just starting. Let's just go. Let's keep moving. All right, so where do I see myself at 68 years old? Okay, or let's take the next number. 10 years from now. Where do I see myself 10 years from now? Where do I see myself 5 years from now? Where do I see myself 1 year from now? Now, if we were to go around the room and we were to ask this question, okay? We were to ask the question, what do you want to do? And by the way, don't think I'm talking down to you guys because you're younger than I am. It's a question I ask adults. And I ask adults all the time. I asked a group of adults this the other day, in fact. I said, what do you want to be when you grow up? Adults go, grow up? I'm like, yeah. What do you want to be? And they're like, I'm grown. I'm like, no, you're not. I've seen you live. You're not that. I tell everybody, somebody asked me one day, they were asking my wife actually, and it kind of got directed at me. They said, how do you put up with Chris? And I said, I have the mental age of a 9-year-old. This works out perfect. Because we're going to get out. We're going to go have some fun because I grew up with adults who became adults and just lacked the drive of life. And the reason I asked, where are you going to be in 20 years and 10 years, is because the average adult, before they're 40, has changed jobs about 12 to 13 times. Now, that's kind of an odd number, but it's going to be more so. So where are you going to be in 20 years? Where are you going to be in 10 years? Where are you going to be in 5 years? Okay, so that's where 20, 10, 5. Now, here's the next one. Where are you going to be in 1 year? 1 year from now, where are you going to be? Now, what we typically say is we say, I want to have a job, I want to have a house, I want to have a car, I want to have all these things. But let's rephrase that. Not only where are you going to be, but who are you going to help? Who are you going to help in 20 years? Who are you going to help in 10 years? Who are you going to help in 5 years? Who are you going to help in 1 year? And the reason I bring that up is when we start thinking, we start in the future, we start changing our mind. When I shared that with a group of adults a little bit ago, when I said a little bit ago, a couple weeks ago, an older man came up to me and he said, hey, I can tell you where I'm going to be in 20 years. I said, where? He's 80 years old. Now I was expecting him to say, I'm going to break 100. You know what he told me? He said, I'm going to be dead. I said, thank you. I said, but that didn't answer the question. Where are you going to be? Are you going to be in heaven? You're going to be in that place we don't talk about. He said, oh, no. I'm going to heaven. I said, because where are you going to be in 10 years? He said, hopefully I'm still going to be alive. I said, where are you going to be 10 years ago or 10 years in the future today, which was Sunday? And he looked at me and he goes, let's see, it'll be Sunday 10 years in the future. So I'll probably be, and he smiled and he went, at church service. Because he knew what I was getting at. He knew that what we think is what happens. Now, so those are the questions for you a little bit. When we talk about what determines our behavior. Where are you going to be in 20 years? Where are you going to be in 10 years? Where are you going to be in 5 years? Where are you going to be in 1 year? Now, if you're really good, you'll do this. Where are you going to be in 6 months? That's where the 6 comes in. Where are you going to be in 3 months? Where are you going to be in 1 month? Like, what are you going to do Christmas? I heard that. Somebody said, yeah. So when you are 1 month out from now, when you're 30 days out from now, are you going to take anything that you've learned and put it into practice? Because one of the things, when we talk about these words, when it says what the Gentiles do, and it talks about the drunkenness and the orgies and the drinking parties and the adultery, is they don't think long term. And what I mean they don't think long term is they don't think about what we call consequences of actions. Consequences of actions. Let me share with you a consequence of an action. When I was 37 years old, I got a phone call. I was having breakfast with somebody, and we were talking about some very, very serious things, and my phone rang. My cell phone rang, and I saw it was my dad. Now, usually when I'm in a meeting, there's very, very few people who can get through on that cell phone. My wife is first, my kids are second, then, my family, but, sometimes I'll push them off. My dad called, and I thought, this is a pretty serious meeting. I said, but hey, let me answer the phone. I picked it up. My dad goes, hey, you got some time to talk? And I said, well, I'm in a meeting. Can I call you back? He said, yeah, call me back, but just whenever you can, call me back as soon as you can. I went, uh-oh, something's not good. Because I know my dad. I can hear his voice. I can hear the inflection. I can hear the way that he enunciates words. Kind of like when your parents get mad at you, they speak perfect English, don't they? What are you doing? And you're like, I heard that. Okay, I knew that something was wrong. So I got in my truck after I had the meeting, and I'm driving. We were in Charleston, South Carolina, and I'm driving over the bridges. And my dad, I called him, and I said, hey, man. I said, what's up, Dad? He said, are you sitting down? I said, I'm driving. He said, call me when you get home. I said, nope, we're not playing this game today. What's going on? He said, your cousin Andy killed himself today. And I remember my stomach sank. Immediately, I said, Dad? I said, what? He said, your cousin took his own life. And I said, what is the deal with that guy? What was he thinking? And I immediately started griping. Immediately, I started getting angry. And one reason I got angry is because my cousin had a 9-month-old child. I got angry. So Dad said, yeah. He said, and by the way, he said, just so you know, he said, they're going to call you because they want you to do the funeral. I said, okay. I get home. I told my wife, Carrie, I said, hey, listen, I'm going to be traveling up to West Virginia. We got this going. I don't know what's happening. We got to get this going. So long story short, we go through all the funeral, and my cousin was not a Christian. And after the funeral, his sister was talking to me, and she said, hey, can I share with you something that nobody else knows? I said, sure. She said, as we were going through his stuff, we found a book that he started to write. And she goes, and I have it. And I said, okay. I said, after you have it, can I have it? And the reason I wanted it is because here was the title. Life in a Bottle, starting at the age of 12. My cousin started drinking at 12 years old consistently. Not just going to a friend's house and stealing, beer out of the fridge or liquor out of the cabinet one time a month. Started doing it consistently. Became an alcoholic, became a drug addict, was losing jobs, job after job after job, sold all of his family's stuff. And all of that began to happen. And what became very interesting is he started writing his thoughts. Today, it breaks my heart. Every day, once a year in April, his wife says, I'm really missing Andy. And I try to avoid Facebook during that day because I want to cry. I want to get mad. I want to get upset. I want to go through the cycle of it because I'm watching his son grow up on Facebook. I'm thinking to myself, it's the consequences of the actions. But one of the things that Andy didn't do is Andy didn't think into the future. He thought right here, right now. So it's just like this verse. We mentioned this yesterday. Proverbs 23 and verse 7, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. So let's ask 4 questions really quick. I'm going to give you 4 questions really fast, and we're going to be done, okay? They're going to go pretty quick. So if you want to, you can write these down. The guys upstairs have the PowerPoint. If you want it, But what do you think about? On a daily basis, kind of what do you think about? And once again, you guys probably think about things differently than I do. Everybody here doesn't have the same thoughts every day. When I woke up this morning, you know what my first thought was this morning? Where am I at? Because I woke up and I knew I wasn't home. I looked around and I said, okay, I'm in a hotel. I'm outside Jacksonville, Florida. All right, sounds good. And I thought, what's today? And I thought, all right, today's Wednesday. We got to speak twice. We're going to roll. We got this. Then I started thinking about tomorrow. What am I going to do? What time am I going to leave tomorrow? What can I take down to my car now? Because I've got about a 7-hour trip home tomorrow, which is fine. I said, what are we going to do? But deeper than that, okay, when you think about your 20 years away and 10 years away and 5 years away and 1 year away, and by the way, that type of thinking will transform where you're going to be at. Because most of the time what we want is we want all the material things. What about the spiritual things? I'll mention something in a second for the guys, but I'll also mention something for the girls that you probably, and I would say, go ahead and start thinking about this. Because at the end of life, they're really, really cool. Philippians chapter 4 and verse 8 says, think on the things that are just, honorable, noble, and of good report. Think on those positive things throughout your life. The next one's Colossians chapter 3 and verse 2. Set your mind on things above, not on things of this earth. Proverbs chapter 3 verses 5 and 6. If you remember a verse today, remember that one. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him and He will direct your paths. You know what it means to trust in the Lord with all your heart? That means to lean. That means it's like a crutch. You're leaning on that. Have you guys in the youth group ever done the trust fall? Okay, the trust fall is where you stand up on like a table and all your friends behind you, they're supposed to catch you when you just lean back and fall. Okay, that's the trust fall. And when you start to lean back, you go, no, I don't know if I trust those people. God is saying, I've got you. I took care of David. I took care of Noah. I took care of all these throughout the time, and I'm going to take care of you. So trust in the Lord with all your heart. But it goes back to this. What do you think about? Because in what do you think about, ready, comes out in the words that you say. These things here about sensuality, passions, drunkenness, orgies, drinking parties, and lawless adultery. It might, and I don't know, because I don't know your guys' life, and I'm not here to lecture you. This might be pretty easy for you guys to say, no, I'm not going to drink because I'm still living at home. What happens when you get out and make your own decisions? And one of your friends comes up and says, hey, will one drink really hurt? And you go, yeah, of course. Really? Are you sure about that? Are you really, really sure? That's where we talked about who we surround ourselves yesterday. You kind of have to put up those boundaries. And those boundaries are kind of like your walls to protect yourself a little bit. Because I'll go ahead and tell you this. In Gadsden, Alabama, where I'm a minister, for the past 9 years, 60% of our young people are no longer in church. 60%. That's 6 out of 10. They don't go. And of that 40%, about half of those go kind of, sort of, maybe when the doors are open. Well, what's that mean? That means we got some work to do. But that means, what do you say? What are you thinking about? Psalm 145 verse 11 says, I'm going to praise God. No, I know that's probably not the coolest thing to do in life as a young person. Probably not the coolest thing to do as an adult sometimes. Because everybody, as an adult, everybody tries to act cooler than what they are. Adults, many times, are just stuck-up kids. That's all they are. Because they're like, I'm an adult now. I don't have to smile. I don't have to do anything else. But when you smile as an adult, people go, what's wrong with you? What's going on? And if you tell them, and I'm going to talk about this at 6 o'clock tonight, if you tell them, hey, listen, I've got a good life. I'm following God. They go, oh, it's the God thing. And they start to see, then they start to realize it's more than what they think because of passages like these. Encourage one another while it's still called today. As you guys have gathered together, have you guys encouraged one another? Have you guys said, hey, it's good to see you? What was really, really funny is this is my first time being here. First time being in the Polishing the Pulpit event. And how many people, I don't even know their names, have come up and said, hey, Really appreciate you being here. Thanks for coming. I'm like, I appreciate it. And who are you? And who's this? And we started to find all these connections because these people are thinking about positive things. They're saying positive things. But here's what it really comes down to. What do you really want? Like if you had to pick 5 things in life, and I just want you to think about this, 5 things in life. And don't give a church answer. You guys know what a church answer is? That's like when you say, what's your favorite book? And everybody goes, it's the Bible. Then immediately says it in church. And when you're outside of church, you'd say something else. All right? But so I want you to think of your real answer. Like, what do you really want to get out of life? Okay? Is it do you really want to get a big house? Do you really want to get a fast car? Do you want to get an airplane? Do you want to get, and this is a funny one, do you want to get a lot of money? Do you want to get all those? Do you want fame and fortune? Do you want to be an influencer? Do you just want the latest iPhone? Whatever. Okay? But if you had to say, what do I really, really want? I would encourage you to think about this. James chapter 4 says, where do wars and fights come from? Comes from our desires. Because we want sometimes what we don't have. And when we get it, we go, oh, I want the newer one. I want that. I want this. My son and I play this game. My son's a car guy. And he'll be 17 tomorrow. And being a car guy, he asked me one day, he said, Dad, he said, what kind of car would you like to have? You have any car in the world. Now, I like cars, and I'll admit, I like going fast, obey the speed limit, because it's in the Bible, Romans chapter 13. But, on a closed track, I'd go really fast. I said, I want a Rimac. Now, if you don't know, so a couple people know what a Rimac is. A Rimac goes 0 to 60 in 1.8 seconds. Now, here's the reality. Who needs that? It's like, hey, I can go from the end of the parking lot up there in like a split second. Okay, well, that doesn't help. So my son the other day, he said, hey, Dad, what kind of car would you like to have if you have any car? I said, you know the answer to that. The answer is, I want the Rimac. You know what he told me? He said, hey, Dad, they're making a new one. It's the next generation, and it goes 0 to 60 in 1.6 seconds. 0.1 faster. I looked at him and I went, ooh. And my wife says, why do you want a car that goes that fast? I said, because I'd probably keep it in the garage and just walk over and polish it. All right? So when we think about this, it's like, what do you want? Yeah. Oh, there it is. Everybody's got it going on. Just ignore it.
We saw a Rimac in Amelia Island
All right, so you've seen a Rimac. Rimacs there's 10 in the world. 10 in the world, Gen 1. But look at this one. Oh, we're going to keep going off for a second. If you can double click the off, or if you can just click OK, or if you can just look at your phone and say, stop making noise. 1 Peter chapter 2 and verse 2, it says, desire the pure milk of the word. Desire to find those passages in the Bible that you really, that create something. One of my favorite is 2 Kings chapter 2. Do you guys know the story about Elisha and the bears? Elisha, when they call him Baldy, that's what they call him. It says, the King James says, go up, thou bald head. That's, when we think about it, they're making fun of him because he's got a bald head. And usually when we're speaking to youth rallies, I'll say, hey, it's like saying, hey, go up there, Baldy, go up Chrome Dome, you go up all this kind of stuff. He curses them. 2 bears come out, and the word there, this is really, really gross, but the word there is the word maul, which means it tears all those kids apart. All right, and you tell that, and people go, that's not in the Bible. And I'll tell people all the time, it's in there. And I had somebody come to me one day, and they had their Bible, they said, that's really in there. I said, yeah. I said, so what are you going to do now? And they were an older person, and they said, they had kids, and they said, you know what? I'm going to go read this to my kids at bedtime. Right? But guess what their kids have never forgot? Don't make fun of bald people. That's what they've remembered. Right? So, you got to desire the pure milk of the word. Now, here's one for you. Let's step it up a notch. For all of our guys that are here, have you thought about becoming an elder? Okay, for all the girls that are here, you can't become an elder. Have you thought about becoming a Bible class teacher? Because listen, you've got to find your abilities. I taught when I was in 11th grade. I made fun of our Bible class list at church. That's exactly what I did. It came up to it, and there was nobody to teach nursery class. So I told my mom, I said, you know what? I think Robbie is my best buddy. Okay, he's my best friend in school, and that was, if you missed yesterday, our youth group was 2. It was me and Robbie. And I said, hey, Robbie and I'll teach it. My mom said, sounds good, and wrote our names down. Here's what I learned. The first day, I am not good at teaching nursery class. The second Sunday, guess what I learned? If you give them Oreos, they're pretty quiet. Guess what I learned the third Sunday? Parents don't like you giving their kids a lot of sugar before worship service. You know what I learned the fourth Sunday? Still not ready for this. We taught it for 13 weeks. We had the time of our life. It was like a zoo run by monkeys. It was crazy, and it didn't make any sense. So, all right, so here's the next one really quick. And I want to share this with you. We don't have time to get into all of it, but here's what I want you to do. If you have your Bibles, go over to Ephesians chapter 5 for a moment. Ephesians chapter 5. And I want to ask you this question. 5 and 1. It's about what are you thinking about? Because you know why most people drink? Most people drink to escape reality. Because they think if I can drink, it's going to calm me. Why do most people get involved in premarital sex? Because it's the desires that they have. When I was in 6th grade, a girl was pregnant. 6th grade. I talked to a youth group not too long ago. Big high school. I don't know how big the high schools are around here, but it was a high school of about 2,000 or 3,000 students. And I said, how many girls there are pregnant? And they said 50 or 60. And I just kind of looked and I said, we got a problem. But why? Why is that? It's because people don't have hope in the future. They don't see the positive things that are coming. They live for the moment. Why do people get involved in drugs? Every person I've talked to finally tells me the same thing. They say it's to escape reality. I talked to a young man snorted so much cocaine, okay, that when he got a sinus infection, this is really gross, but it shows you the extent of this. When he got a sinus infection, he could tilt his head back and forth, and he was telling me this, and he goes, so what are you doing? He goes, I can feel stuff rolling around in my head because it created a cavity in his brain, in his skull. I looked at him and I said, what? And he goes, yeah. He goes, can you hear it? And I was like, no, I don't want to hear it. That's gross. But I asked him, I said, why did you do that? And he said, I did it to escape my life because I wasn't happy with my life. So I want you to remember this verse, Ephesians chapter 5, verse 18, and we're going to close with this one. But I want to go back to verse 15 for a second. It says, look carefully then how you walk, not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of your time because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. Ready for this? It says, do not get drunk with wine, for that's debauchery, but be filled with the Spirit. Paul says, don't start, the word there in the Greek is don't start the process of drinking wine. Okay, but here's the opposite. You got to be filled with the Spirit. Like what fills you up? Like what excites you every day? And what makes you realize, hey, life's going to get better. Life's going to get phenomenal. And I don't know what you're told by adults. I know what I was told by adults. When I was in school, they said, hey, when you get out of school, you're going to be back in school. When you're out of elementary school, you're going to be, when you go to middle school, you're going to be back here. When you're in the high school, you go to middle school. When you go to college, you want to go to high school. When you're out of college, you want to go back to college. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't want to go back to school because I love my life every single day. And it's going to get better. And the reason it's going to get better is because of this verse. Everything that we see is going to pass away, but that what we don't see is eternal. One day we get to go to heaven and we get to take other people with us. I get to see my grandfather and my grandmother. I get to see my uncle who I never met. He passed away when he was 6 years old, my mom's little brother. I get to see him. I don't know if he's going to be a little kid or if he's going to be big. If he's going to be a little kid, he's going to fly through heaven at 100 miles an hour because I've seen the old film strips of him. That kid was wild. By the way, they did bring him to Florida when he was 5, and they bought him an alligator. Yeah, I asked my grandmother, what happened to it? She says, we really don't know. I don't know what that means. But you get to see all those people because it's exciting. But what fills you up? To be able to avoid some of this Gentile behavior we know that is wrong, we've got to plan towards the future, and we got to figure out what fills us up. What excites us? And Paul says it needs to be those spiritual things that excite you. So once again, last question. What determines your behavior? It's what's up in here. I would encourage you guys, stick with the Bible, go to the Bible, surround yourself with good people, and start looking to who can you serve in the future. All right. Thank you very much for listening. And give him the glory, great things he has done.